Masechet Baba Kama Daf Kof Dalid. The Mishnah stated, Lo yiten lo libno velo lishlucho. Someone steals money from someone else and then lies and swears falsely, denying it. So in order to make teshubah, one of the steps is he has to return what he stole, the item or the money, and he has to return it directly to the victim and put it in his hand. He cannot send his son and he cannot send a messenger, although he can send a shaliach betin. If the messenger is appointed by betin and he puts it in the betin's hand, then that's official, and then he's exempt. And even if something happens on the way, once he gave it to the betin, gave it to the agent of the betin, then he returned it and he's exempt. However, if he gives it to his son or a non authorized agent, not authorized by the betin, then if the agent takes it and it gets lost on the way, the sender, the robber, is still responsible to pay again. Itmar shaliach sha'asao be'adim Rav Chisda amad have shaliach, Rabba amad lo have shaliach. So now there's machloket about a messenger that is made with witnesses. That is, if the victim appoints in front of witnesses, appoints a messenger and says, "Go, I don't want to go I don't want to go myself. I don't want to wait till the robber goes and brings it to me. Here, you go on my behalf, and here in front of witnesses, I appoint you." And so now this guy comes to the robber and says, "Listen, I'm appointed by the victim in front of witnesses. How about that? Is that okay?" So Rav Chisda says, yes, that is a shaliach, and once the robber gives him the money, that's it. He is exempt, and even if it gets lost on the way. But Rabba says, no, it's still not good enough. It's not the same as a shaliach betin, and if it gets lost on the way, the robber will have to pay again. Rav Chisda amar have shaliach lehachi tarchevuk mebeadim deleku birshuteh. So we'll explain each side. Rav Chisda says this is a shaliach, and that's why the victim, the sender, took the trouble of appointing him in front of witnesses, so that, yes, this will be under, to put the matter under the agent's domain, that he is officially recognized by me, and I take full responsibility once it gets into his hand. However, Rabba amar lo have shaliach hachi kamar inish mehem nahu isamach tzemoch ibait l'shadure bideh shidar bideh. But Rabba says no, he's not an official agent that represents the sender who is the victim, but rather what the victim is saying. Listen, I appointed this guy in front of witnesses just to tell you that he's a trustworthy person. I think he's trustworthy, and therefore, if you, the robber, want to rely on him to send the money, then go ahead and send the money in his possession. But it doesn't mean I'm taking responsibility. The agent's not taking responsibility, and the victim is not taking responsibility. He's just offering him as a good suggestion that he's the kind of guy that you can trust. But ultimately, even with witnesses, it's the robber's responsibility to make sure that it gets there. Best way is if he goes himself. Or a court-appointed betin is also good, but even a witness, even an agent in front of two witnesses, is not an official witness. Okay, now we're going to challenge Rav Chisda from a couple of sources. First, from a Mishnah in Baba Metziah. Tenan, Hashol et hapara, v'shidacha biyad beno, biyad abdo, biyad shilucho, o biyad beno, biyad abdo, biyad shilucho shel shoel, umeta patur. Someone wants to borrow a cow from the owner of the cow, and so now it has to get there. And so, just like in the previous case, the transportation is always dangerous. What happens if something if it gets lost or damaged on the way? Who's going to be responsible? So, if the owner of the cow sends it with the son or slave or messenger of the owner of the cow, or if he sends it in the hands of the son or slave or messenger of the borrower, either way, if it dies on the way, the borrower is exempt from paying, not his problem. In other words, it's the sender's responsibility to make sure that it gets there safely, no matter who he sends, whether from his side or from the other side. and the borrower is not responsible until it gets to his hands. So let's explain this Mishnah. When it says sends it with a messenger, what would be the case of a messenger? If the borrower may appointed a messenger not in front of witnesses, then how would anybody know that this person is an agent of the borrower? Some random guy shows up at the door of the owner of the cow and says, "Oh, I'm a messenger for Mr. Borrower." Well, but there's no witnesses and no proof. So he could be anybody. So there's no way to know he was an agent. So it can't be that case. Rather, it just makes sense. It must be that he appointed him with witnesses. And so there's proof. He comes to the door. He says, look, here's witnesses that were there. These witnesses saw the borrower appoint me as an agent to take this cow. And the witnesses say, yes, yeah, we saw him say that. And nevertheless, the borrower is not responsible if it dies on the way. There's a challenge to Rav Chisda, who just said that if you appoint an agent with witnesses, then that is an official agent. Let's say in our case, if the victim appoints an agent in front of witnesses, once it gets into the hands of the agent and it gets lost, so the robber does not have to pay again. That's it. The agent takes responsibility. But over here, the borrower who appointed the agent in front of witnesses does not have responsibility. He says patur. So how can we reconcile Rav Chisda? Kedamar Rav Chisda bischiro ulkito hachaname bischiro ulkito. In fact, this is a case where the agent was not appointed in front of witnesses. The borrower just sent him. And that which you asked, well, how do you know that this is an agent of the borrower? We're talking about a case where it was a person who works for the borrower. The guy who wants to borrow the cow, it's his hired hand or his regular harvester. So people recognize him. Oh, this is the guy. Yeah, he works on the borrower's field. If he shows up and says, listen, my boss wants to borrow the cow, I'm here to take it. So then we know that he is in fact has been sent by the borrower. The thing is that it's not in front of witnesses, so it doesn't become official, and he doesn't take responsibility for it. So that's how Rav Chisda can reconcile it. Rav Chisda actually says this about another case, the case coming up. We're just using Rav Chisda's answer that he said in the next case and applying it here also because it answers the question. So here now another challenge against Rav Chisda. Tenan, this one from our Mishnah. Lo yiten lo libno v'lo lishlucho, hai shlucho hechidameh. The Mishnah taught that the robbery victim who wants to repay what he owes should not give it to the son of the victim or the agent of the victim, that the victim sends someone. So this agent, what kind of case is it? If the robbery victim did not appoint this agent in front of witnesses, then how is anybody supposed to know that he's an agent? A random person shows up at the robber's door and says, oh, I'm an agent for the victim and give me the money. It can't be. Rather must be that the agent appointed him in front of witnesses. And the witnesses come along. Yes, we are witnesses. We saw this is an official agent of the victim and you should pay him for it. And yet the Mishnah says that it doesn't work. And that return, giving that agent the money, is not considered returning the lost item until it gets actually to his hands. And if it gets lost on the way, the robber will be responsible. So this is exactly against Rav Chisda, who said that if it's in front of witnesses, then an agent is valid. Targema Rav Chisda bischiro ulkito. Again, here Rav Chisda says we're talking about a case where the victim sent this agent not in front of two witnesses. If it was in front of two witnesses, then that's Rav Chisda says the agent would be responsible. But here we're talking about where the victim sent his regular worker that everybody knows. Who's this guy? Oh yeah, this is the worker who works on the victim's field. And he shows up, so that's how we know that he is in fact an agent for the victim. However, since it was not in front of two witnesses, so he does not take on responsibility for it, and therefore the robbery victim should not give it to him, but should make sure it gets to the victim directly. Aval shaliach sha'aso be'adim mai hachanam dehave shaliach. We ask a follow-up question against Rav Chisda. So you're telling me that if the victim sent an agent with witnesses, then what? Then it would be an official shaliach, and the robber would be then exempt once he repays it to the hands of the agent. Well, then the continuation of the Mishnah doesn't make sense, because the continuation of Mishnah is distinguishing between a regular agent and an agent of the Bet Din. If he gives it to the agent of the Bet Din, then that's official. But we always want, if we want to make a distinction, and we always want to make the finest distinction possible, and so we should have made the Mishnah should have made a distinction within an agent appointed by the victim, and said if it's a regular agent that he just sent without witnesses is no good, but if he sent an agent with witnesses, then that is official, rather than jumping to a totally different case of a shaliach appointed by Bet Din. So the fact that it only talks about shaliach Bet Din suggests that if he appointed the shaliach in front of witnesses, still it would not be good. Challenge to Rav Chisda. Amari la pesika le shaliach Bet Din lo shenasa o nigzal v'lo shenasa o gazlan have shaliach pesika le shaliach shasa o be'edim dechi asa o nigzal hu have shaliach asa o gazlan lo have shaliach la pesika le. And the answer that the rabbis give is that the agent appointed by the victim is not a definite case. It's not one that you can say across the board. Whereas the shaliach that's made by a Bet Din, you can make a declaration across the board. Any type of shaliach appointed by the court will be a valid shaliach. And it doesn't matter whether the nigzal, the victim, goes to court and says, hey, can you send a shaliach for me? Or if the robber goes to court and ask the court, can you make a shaliach for me to send the repayment? Either way works. Those both are called officially recognized, designated agents, and they take responsibility. That's why the Mishnah can say that as a definitive statement. But if the Bet Din does not get involved, but only witnesses, then if the victim appoints it, then it is officially a shaliach. This is according to Rav Chisda. But if the robber makes it, it's not officially a shaliach. So by the time the Mishnah has to make this distinction, doesn't want to be so wordy and have to make these fine distinctions. So rather, it chooses a case that's easier to say because it's categorical. All shalichei Bet Din are good. So that's why he says a regular shaliach that has no witnesses is no good across the board. A shaliach Bet Din is good across the board no matter who makes it. And the Mishnah doesn't want to deal with the more complicated case, even though it's true that if the victim makes a shaliach in front of Bet Din, then that will be a good shaliach. But if the robber makes a shaliach in front of witnesses, it will not be officially recognized. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar omer, shaliach Bet Din she'asao nigzal velo asao gazlan, or asao gazlan ve'shalach alav v'natan et shelo miyado patur. This interpretation of the Mishnah excludes the following Tana, which is a Braita named Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. In other words, our Mishnah, according to this interpretation within Rav Chisda, will not agree with Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's opinion, who says that a shaliach of a Bet Din that was made by the victim, and if the victim goes to a Bet Din and asks him to make an agent, but was not made by the robber. So in that case, patur, if something should happen to it on the way. So in other words, the nigzal, the victim, can make an official shaliach Bet Din, right? So that actually everybody agrees with. But here's what the other part: or asao gazlan v'shalach alav v'natal et shelo. Or if the robber rather made a court-appointed shaliach, and he sent it, and in the meantime, the victim also sent a shaliach to receive it from him. In that case, also we will recognize that the agent sent by the robber, because the victim obviously agrees to it, because he sent his own shaliach to meet him in the middle and accept the item. So in that case, also, if it gets lost on the way, before the agent appointed by the court and the robber meet the agent appointed by the victim, if it gets lost before they meet, so the robber is exempt. So in that case also would be good, but only in that case. So this suggests that if the victim did not send an agent at all, and it was only the robber who went to Bet Din, and they made an agent for him, and he's on the way and loses it, then the robber would be liable to send it again. So this is against our Mishnah, because our Mishnah, as we just explained, says that this is la pesika. If the Bet Din appoints a messenger, no matter what, whether it's by the victim or by the robber, that's an official messenger. And if it gets lost, the robber does not have to send it again. But according to this, there is a case where the robber's court-appointed messenger will not be officially recognized. Rabbi Yochanan v'Rabbi Elazar d'Amiret Harvayhu shaliach sa'o be'adim haveh shaliach v'im tomar mishnatenu. So now we say, we've been challenging Rav Chisda the whole time. Now we note that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, they both agree with Rav Chisda, and they say that a messenger that was made with witnesses is a good messenger. That is the victim that made the messenger. That's good. And once it gets it into his hands, it's considered a return. And if you ask, what about our Mishnah that says a shaliach, and it says don't send it in the hands of a shaliach of the victim. B'mamsi lo shaliach damale it li zuzeh gabe pelanya vela kameshadar lehu it hazele dilma inishu tela mashkach leshadurele. So explains that our Mishnah is not talking about a regular agent that's appointed in front of witnesses. In that case, it would be good, right? That's what all these sages say. But when our Mishnah says that do not send it in front of an agent, is talking about this particular case where the victim sends an agent and it tells the agent, listen, I have money that this guy owes me because he robbed it from me. But the problem is he doesn't have anyone to send it with. He just doesn't have a way to get it here. So go appear in front of him, and maybe just because he doesn't have anyone, so he can send it with you. So it's not that the victim is appointing him officially as an agent. He's just telling him, listen, go over there, present yourself as an option for the robber. If he wants, he can send it. If he wants, he can send someone else, but maybe he just doesn't have anybody else. So then you can get it from there. But he doesn't mean to appoint him officially as an agent that will be responsible. The victim doesn't want to take responsibility for something happening on the way. The victim has a right to get it into his hands. It's the robber that has to make sure that it gets into his hands. So the victim will make it easier. Oh, you're going there anyway. Ask the robber if he wants to send it with you, but the robber will still be responsible. That's the case of the Mishnah. But if he appointed him as an official agent in front of witnesses, then that the agent would be responsible. Or we can answer as we have before, that it was in fact not in front of witnesses that the victim sent the agent. And well, when you ask, well, how do you know he's an agent? It was someone that works for the victim. So that's how everybody knows that. And so he comes and says, hey, listen, the victim sent me to you, the robber, to pay, but he was not officially appointed as an agent, and therefore the robber would still be responsible if something happened on the way, and that is the case of the Mishnah. Now that we mentioned the problem of things getting lost on the way when you send it with an agent, we learn another halacha about this. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel En meshalachin ma'ot bidyokani va'afilu adim chatumim aleha. Rabbi Yochanan Amar im adim chatumim aleha meshalachin. Let's say you have a creditor, he wants to collect money from the debtor, but he can't get there himself. And the debtor's not coming to give it himself. So the creditor sends an agent. Now, how's the debtor going to know that this agent is truly sent by the sender? So Shemuel's ruling is that one should not give money to a messenger who comes with a document that has a figure on it. Diukani, it's a Greek word. It means a figure. And this would be some kind of drawing or stamp that is known to be that of the sender, or a signature. Even if there are witnesses that are signed on it, authenticating that this signature, this symbol really is that of the sender, and therefore you can trust that this is an authorized agent, nevertheless, Shemuel says, not good enough. Do not trust that agent. And if you send the money with him and it gets lost, then the one who's paying, the debtor, will still be responsible to pay for it. Not an authorized signature. It's not a guarantee once you hand over the money to the agent that that's it. Now that's the creditor's responsibility. No, don't trust such a symbol. However, Rabbi Yochanan argues and says, listen, if it's just a drawing by itself, then you can't, then doesn't authorize the agent. But if there are witnesses signed on it, then once the debtor hands over the money to the agent, that's it. It's out of his hands. Now it's the responsibility of the creditor. And if the agent lost it, then he would not have to pay again. Okay, Amri Lishmuel my takantav. So now we ask, according to Shmuel, what can we do in such a case where it's not possible for them to get together personally, and the creditor wants to collect money and wants to send someone? How, in what way would it be possible to authenticate an agent so that the debtor would know that, the debtor doesn't want to send money and then it gets lost and he has to pay again. He wants a guarantee that this is the agent, and once he gives it to the agent, then the agent will be responsible. So how can we accomplish that according to Shemuel? We have an answer in the following story. Rabbi Abba was owed money by Rav Yosef bar Chama. So Rabbi Abba, he's not getting to Rav Yosef's house, but he wants to collect his money. So Amar le Rav Safra, so Rabbi Abba tells Rav Safra, you're going to the area where Rav Yosef lives. On your way back, can you go and collect the money for me and bring it back to me? So Rav Safra is happy to comply, and he goes to Rav Yosef's house. But it's Rava, Rav Yosef's son, who's dealing with the matter. So this is Rava, Rav Yosef's son. He's the debtor. And the Rava says, "Mi katav lach hitkabalti." He says to the messenger, Rav Safra, "Do you have a receipt that says I have received the payment?" In other words, I want you to give me a receipt from Rabbi Abba that says that you received the payment, and I'll hold on to that receipt. That way, in case it gets lost on the way, or a miscommunication, or something happens, and he comes and says, "Oh, you never paid me." Well, how am I going to have proof that I paid you, and you're really the authorized agent? Amar le La says, "No, I don't have such a receipt." So therefore, Rava says to Rav Safra, "Go back and get such a receipt, and then come back, and a receipt that says I received payment." The Sof Amar le, now it's going to be very inconvenient to go and come back. Who knows if he's on the way back? After thinking about it more, Rava said, "You know what? It won't even help. Even if you go back and get a receipt that says I received payment, it would not be sufficient for us. Dilma adaati chachib Rabbi Abba v'naflu zuzeh kameh yatmeh v'itkabalti Rabbi Abba lav kilumhu, because it could be that Rabbi Abba will write a receipt and he will authorize you, Rav Safra, to be an agent. But by the time you get here, Rabbi Abba may die. Now, once he dies, the agency is null and void. And in that case, Rav Safra, he may not even know that Rabbi Abba died in the meantime. But Rav Safra will no longer be an agent, and instead the payment will be due to the orphans. And this receipt of hitkabalti of Rabbi Abba will be nothing, because then the orphans will say, "Who wrote this receipt? Our father? What do you mean? After he died?" You gave it to an agent, but he wasn't an agent because he had already died by the time you gave him the money. We never received the money, and then we're going to have to pay again. So even if you come up with a receipt from Rabbi Abba, still, there's no guarantee to us that we won't have to pay again. And so I'm not going to pay the money unless he has to come himself, but he's not coming himself. So what are we going to do? So Rav Safsas says, what can I do? What can I do to satisfy you that you will know that I'm an agent and you can pay me and then you'll be off the hook? And the answer is Zil nakninu lach agab ar'a v'ta at ketob lach hitkabalti. So here's the Rava says here's what you should do. Go back to Rabbi Abba, and Rabbi Abba should transfer to you the debt. With land. See, with money and movable things, you have to either have the item itself to pull it, but if you don't have the item itself, you can do a kinyan agav. If one person transfers land, you could say, together with the land, I'm also transferring to you this movable item, or this money, or even this debt. So therefore, he should transfer the debt over to you, in which case, Rava and his father will owe the money no longer to Rabbi Abba, but rather they'll owe the money to Rav Safra himself. And then Rav Safra in his next trip will go and collect the money himself. And he's right there, so you're paying the creditor directly, and then we'll know, we paid you directly, and then you can go and work it out with Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba obviously trusts you, and then you will pay him pay him the rest of the money. And so that is a solution to the problem. So you cannot trust, according to Shemuel, you cannot trust a signature or a design, even if there's witnesses on it. So then how can you ever appoint an agent that you will know that this is truly him? And even if he comes with a document and a receipt, maybe the sender died in the meantime. So this is a way to do it. You transfer the loan to the agent, so it's no longer an agent. He's actually, the agent becomes the creditor himself. And another story that's similar, Ki hadra papa hava masik teresad al fezuze behozai. Aknin hu nihale Rav Shemuel bar Abba agav asefa de bete ki hata nefak leape ad tavach. Rav Papa was owed 12,000 dinar of a residence of Behozai, which was far away, and so he wanted to collect it. So he wasn't traveling there. He transferred the debt to Rav Shemuel bar Abba by the threshold of his house. In other words, here you acquire a piece of this threshold. It doesn't have to be a lot of land. It could just be even a small piece of land. Here, acquire my threshold of my house, and with it, acquire also this debt. So then Shemuel bar Abba, he went there, and he was able to collect it that way. And on his way back, Rav Papa was so happy that he was able to have his debt collected that he went out all the way to Tavach. In other words, he was so excited that Rav Papa was so excited that he finally got his debt paid, that he went all the way out there to greet Rav Shemuel bar Abba, who successfully brought him the money. We now move on to the next part of the Mishnah. Natan lo et hakeren. If the robber paid the principal amount, and he did that in person, now they have to deliver in person, but did not deliver the 1/5 surcharge, the robber does not have to travel far and pay extra expenses in order to give the victim the extra surcharge. So what's the difference between the principal and the surcharge? That he doesn't have to go there? Al machomesh mamonahu v'im mayit meshalemi leyorshin. So we see the nature of this surcharge is that it's a monetary obligation and not a fine. Let's explain what we're talking about. This guy, he's a robber and he swore falsely. Therefore, not only does he have to pay back what he stole, as any robber does, that would be a monetary restitution. But this robber also, because he swore falsely and now is in this new category of this violation, he has to also atone for himself. Part of the atonement is returning the item. That's why he can't get atoned until he returns the item. That's why he has to pay every expense to go and return it to the owner. He also has to pay the surcharge and bring a korban. But that surcharge itself, there's two ways to see it. Either it itself is a monetary obligation that he owes to the that party, like a loan to the victim. Now he doesn't. That's one scenario. Or it's a fine. It's a ritual obligation. In order for him to receive atonement, he has to give the surcharge also. So you see, the original keren, the principal that he had to pay, it was actually both. He has to pay, he owes it to him, and he also, it's a ritual obligation, he has to give in order to gain atonement. But how about the chomesh? It's a ritual obligation to gain atonement, but let's say he doesn't want to get atonement, then he doesn't have to pay, right? Or is it a simple monetary obligation that he owes him this money? Okay, so we analyze the Mishnah. Since the Mishnah says that the robber does not have to go and pay extra expenses and travel to give it to him, it means it's just a regular monetary obligation. It's like a regular robber who doesn't steal. He has to pay it back, but he doesn't have to give extra expenses to put it in his hand. Or someone like who owes a loan, like we saw before. Right? I owe you a loan. Fine, come here and collect it. Prove that you're an agent and all that. I don't have to go specifically and give it to you in order to be absolved. You have to come and collect it. So the fifth surcharge is a regular monetary obligation and not a special fine that is needed in order to achieve atonement. Therefore, if the robber dies, then the heirs of the robber have to pay, which is true of a monetary obligation that the father didn't pay. So then they can, the one who it's owed to can come and collect it from the heirs. And that would not be true of a fine. If it's a fine, then the father has to pay the fine. But if the father died, then the heirs would not have to pay a fine. Good. So that's a proof from our Mishnah. And we're going to add an additional proof from the continuation of the Mishnah and also from another Baraita. Utnan name. Natanet hakeren v'nishma al chomesh, harem mosiv chomesh al machumsha mamonahu. The continuation of Mishnah said, let's say the robber paid the principal, and then he took a false vow saying that, I already paid the fifth surcharge, I don't owe it. But he was lying. So now, because he lied on another debt that he actually owes, so now he's going to have to bring another surcharge on that surcharge, a fifth of that fifth, plus another korban. And if he lies about that too, it goes on forever. You see from here also that the surcharge originally was a fifth of that was a regular monetary obligation, and then because he lied about it, now it turns into something that he has to give as a fine in order to achieve atonement. But now but it now has an extra fifth. But this whole law of swearing falsely, and therefore you have to pay an extra surcharge and a sacrifice, only applies to a regular monetary obligation, which the surcharge was originally. So that's another proof. We have a Baraita that proves this also. Hagozel tchabero v'nishma lo umet. Yorshin meshalamin keren v'chomesh upeturin min ha'asham. Someone who steals from someone else and he lies falsely about it, and then that robber dies. The heirs have to pay the principal and the surcharge, but they don't have to bring korban asham. They don't bring korban asham because they're not the ones who stole and lied, so they don't have to bring a guilt offering. But they do have to pay the original amount and the surcharge. They have to pay the surcharge because anytime their father owes something and he dies, they have to pay it if it's a monetary obligation. If it was only a fine, then they would not have to pay it. All right, so now we have all those proofs. But here's the problem. We have a proof the other way. V'yorshin b'nei shalomei chumsha davohon havu al machomesh mamonahu ba'eh shalomei yorshin urminhu. Is it true that the heirs have to pay the surcharge for their father, and that would indicate that this is a regular monetary obligation, and that's why the heirs have to pay. But we have a Baraita. This is from the Sifra, the Midrash Halacha and Sefer Vayikra, which right before what the quotation here, it says that one has to pay the surcharge. But a father who himself steals and lies has to pay a surcharge. But a son, once the father dies, a son does not have to pay such a surcharge. That's what the Baraita said right before this. But then it elaborates. V'adayin ani omer. And it says, when do we say that the son does not have to pay the fifth surcharge for the father? Well, certainly the son would not have to pay if neither the father nor the son took a false oath. Well, that's for sure. Nobody took a false oath, so then nobody would have to pay a surcharge. That's all I would know from the Pesukim that it quoted before this. Hu velo aviv, aviv velo hu ve'aviv minayin. But let's say either the father or the son or both did swear falsely. How do I know that in that case the son still does not have to pay the fifth surcharge? Talmud Lomad asher gazal v'asher ashak. Vehu lo gazal velo ashak, because in the context of that pasuk, it says he has to pay back that which he stole or that which he exploited. That means only the person who himself is a robber and swore falsely has to pay the fifth. But if the son who did not rob himself, he didn't do the robbery, so even if the son swears falsely and said, "No, my father never had to pay you anything," even though it's just a regular false swear. I mean, you're not allowed to make a false swear in general, but if you just say a false swear about something, you don't have to pay a fifth because of that. So the son, although they made a false swear, because they're not the ones that stole, the son does not have to pay a fifth. The point here is that the last baraita from the Sifra is arguing that a son never has to pay a fifth. And this is a challenge to the Mishnah and the first baraita that said a son does have to pay a fifth. Amar Rav Nachman lakashya, kan keshe hoda, kan keshe lo hoda. Rav Nachman says there's no contradiction. The Mishnah and the first baraita are talking about where the robber, the father, admitted to what he did. So because he admitted to it, now he owes it and the son also will owe it. But the Sifra is talking about where the father never admitted to it. And so he himself never incurred that obligation to pay. But then it turns out that it was after he died. Now we know that it was done, that the father had lied, and so since the father never admitted to it, so the son would not have to pay. That's the difference between the different baraitot. But we challenge this answer of Rav Nachman. Ilo hoda kedenami lo mishalem. If the father never admitted that he did anything wrong, so that means he doesn't admit that he owes money and doesn't admit that he swore falsely, because he thinks that he was claiming that the swear was true and he didn't owe money. So if he never admitted to it, then the heirs would not have to pay the principal either. And maybe you'll say, yes, indeed, that's the case, that they would not have to pay. And this is talking about the Sifra here, right? The Sifra is the case where he did not admit, and that's why the Sifra says he doesn't have to pay the surcharge. And so, but if he doesn't have to pay the surcharge because there's no admission by the father, then we don't know the father did anything wrong. Then the heir shouldn't have to pay the principal. And if you say that, yes, that's indeed what the Sifra means. But the whole discussion of the Sifra was discussing, well, do the heirs have to pay the fifth? That seems to mean that it's assuming, of course, that yes, they are paying the principal. Otherwise, it would have said, they don't have to pay do they have to pay the principal? But it's only asking, do they pay the fifth? Sounds like for sure the heirs have to pay for the principal. Ve'o Tanya, and furthermore, the continuation of the Sifra says, "V'adayna me'omerim atahu mishalem keren al gezel aviv bizman shenishba hu ve'aviv, aviv ve'lo hu ve'lo aviv, lo hu ve'lo aviv minayin, tamud omar gezela ve'oshek abeda u'pikadon yesh tamud." The continuation does discuss about the heirs paying the principal, and it says, when do we say that the heirs have to pay the principal for what the father stole? By the way, you see here that says the heirs have to pay. So when does he have to pay? Only when when both of them made a false vow, right? The son and the father both swore falsely. The father said, I never stole anything, I don't owe. And the son also says, my father didn't do anything. And it turns out that they were lying. Then the son has to pay the principal. So that I know for sure. But what about not that case? What if it's the father that swore falsely but not the son, or only the son swore falsely but not the father, or neither of them swore falsely? How do I know that still, okay, there's no fifth in that case because no one swore falsely in the last case, but still, how do I know that the son still has to pay the principal? As it says, Gezela, Oshek, Abeda, Pikadon, the Pasuk mentions other items, robbery, exploitation, lost items, deposit, Yesh Talmud, and so there's a lot of extra Pesukim here that show the extra cases from which we derive that there is payment of the principal. So for sure there is payment of the principal, and therefore has to be that we know that he did it. Now, if he didn't admit to it, then how would we know he did it? And why would he have to pay the principal? So the fact that he has to pay the principal means that you cannot say Rav Nachman that the Sifra is talking about a case where he never admitted to it. And so Rav Nachman's answer is not possible. Okay, before we give the next answer, we have to explain this Yesh Talmud. I explained already what the conclusion is, but it's kind of confusing, right? Talmud Omar, it quotes Pesukim, and then Yesh Talmud. What does this Yesh Talmud at the end of the Braita mean? So Rav Huna was repeating this statement here that we just mentioned, and Amar le Rabba bere. Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, was listening and said, Yesh Talmud kamar mor or Yish Talimu kamar mor. Can you repeat what you just said again? Remember, this is all Torah Sheba'al Peh. They're not reading it. He's listening to it, and he says, I didn't catch what you said. It sounded like you said Yesh Talmud, but that doesn't seem to make any sense at the end of a sentence or anywhere. So maybe you said Yish Talmu, which would fit the context, right? Therefore, Yish Talmu, you have to pay for, the son has to pay for anything that the father stole or kept a lost item or something that he had deposited with him and didn't return. So which one did you say, Dad? Amar le yesh Talmud kamina umeribuya dikra'e amari. Yes, you heard right the first time. I said yesh Talmud. There is what to learn from here, and what I meant is that there's a lot of extra words in this pasuk and those extra words teach us that the son has to pay for the principal. Okay, so in the end, we know for sure the son has to pay the principal. Therefore, we know for sure the father did something wrong. We know that because the father must have admitted that he did something wrong, and so you can't give the answer of Rav Nachman that the Mishnah in the first Braita is when he admitted, and the second one's when they did not admit. So we need a new answer. Ela mai lo hoda abiv vehoda beno. Rather, when Rav Nachman said about the second Braita, the Sifra, when he said that that's talking about a case where he did not admit, that he refers only to the father, but the son did admit to what his father did. So, in other words, the father stole and swore falsely about it, but he never admitted to it, so in his lifetime, we never know that he did that, so therefore the father never became obligated to the surcharge in his lifetime. Only after he died, the son then, when said, first the son may himself have sworn falsely about it, but then the son admitted, my father actually, he did steal and swore falsely. And now the son also himself swore falsely originally about it. In that case, the son certainly does have to pay the surcharge, the principal, because he just admitted that his father stole, so his father owed money, so now the son will have to owe the money. That's what the second case is, the Sifra, second Braita is talking about. But we ask about that. But in this case, the son himself made a false swear, so why doesn't he have to pay a surcharge himself for his own false swear? We're talking about a case where the stolen object no longer is in existence. See, if the father stole, then whether the object is in existence or not, the father owes money. So he would, if he swore falsely, he would have to pay the surcharge. However, the son, remember, the son says he does not pay, only one who stole has to give the surcharge. So if the item is in existence, he has this stolen item in existence. But if the item does not exist, the son is not the one that stole. So even if he swore falsely, he does not have to pay a surcharge. So the item does not exist. That's what we're talking about. Wait a second, but if the item does not exist, then the son should not even have to pay the principal, because if, assuming that the son only inherited cash, movable items, the law is that the son does not have to pay for stolen a stolen payment that his father owed, or a loan that his father owed. The son does not have to pay from that cash inheritance. So, we must be talking about a case where the son actually inherited land from his father, and in that case, that the father had land, and then it goes to the son. In that case, the son does have to clear out and pay the debts of the father. But then we ask, so even if there is land that the son inherited, so what? The money that the father owes for what he stole is the same as an oral loan. And in the case of an oral loan, the creditor cannot collect from the heirs, and not even if the heirs have land, and also not from purchased property, because an oral loan does not create a lien on property. So therefore, the son should not have to pay the principal. We must be talking about a case where the father had already stood judgment, and there was already a trial and a verdict. Once there's a verdict, so that the verdict is like a written loan, a payment that you have to, there's something that you have to pay after a court decided you have to pay it, does create a lien on land, and that's why the sons have to pay that principal. Wait a second, if there was already a trial, so now this and then the son lies about it, and then admits after, then the son should have to pay a fifth surcharge for that money that he owed and lied about. Amar Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua lefi she'en meshalemin chomesh al kefirat shi'abud karkaot. We explained because Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says no, the whole law of paying a surcharge does not apply if you deny payment of something that you owe where that debt is secured by land, because then the creditor can go and say he has a lien on the land, so he'll go and collect from the land. So it doesn't affect him as much, the fact that the debtor lied about it and swore as a lie, right? That is much more effective. The false swear is much more effective. If it's an oral loan, that's a big problem. And so therefore, here, precisely because there is a lien on the land, even though the son swore falsely about it, he doesn't have to pay a fifth, because you never have to pay a fifth in such a case. All right, so in that we answered all the questions, and we revived Rav Nachman's response. And now another possible response within Rav Nachman. Rava Amar hacha b'mayaskinan kegon shayta disakaya shel aviv mufkedet biyad acherim keden meshalem taha'ite chomesh lo meshalem dechi ishtaba bekushta ishtaba taha lo hava yada. So when we asked before that the son should have to pay the fifth surcharge for his own lie, and we answered that, it's where the stolen item doesn't exist, and the son does not have to pay for swearing about an item that doesn't exist. So we had to assume that the item didn't exist, and that led to this answer that we just finished. But Rava says, no, I can even talk about where the item does exist. And that what you asked, well, then the son should have to pay the fifth surcharge for his own lie. Here we're talking about a case where the stolen item was in the father's sack. Di sakaya is a Greek word, meaning di double sack, literally like an English sack. A double sack, like this donkey that has two sacks on each side of it, saddlebags. So the stolen item was in the saddlebags, and this whole donkey with the saddlebags was in someone else's possession. Someone else was holding on to it. So the son didn't know that the stolen item existed. He didn't know about it. In that case, the son, once they find it and realize, the father actually had the stolen item the whole time, then the son will have to pay the principal, because it's right there. It's a stolen item. A son always has to give back a stolen item, even if he inherits nothing, no land. He still has to give back the intact stolen item. And the son, it's true, he swore swore falsely about it, but he will not have to pay a surcharge because when he made the vow, he thought he was telling the truth. He sincerely didn't know that the father had stolen it. Once that guy who had the donkey then returns it, and then they look in and they see the stolen item, so then he realizes, oh, I swore falsely, but it was a mistake. So you don't have to pay a surcharge if you swore falsely by mistake. So the Vas says that the second Baraita, the Sifra, could in fact be talking about this case, and this also resolves the contradiction. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'Amen. Or like a